Well, hello, 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 and I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. Thank you so much for tuning in to our happy hour. So let's see. Well, tonight we've got a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a small town that a lot of people know. You might know Jerome. We're going to talk a little about Jerome, as well as some music history from inside a car stuck on a pole, as well as then my friend Jeannie's going to come on and we're going to talk about fashion history and all kinds of fun things about some Arizona history. So we're going to have a great night here. So just so you know, so today is Thursday, June 4th, as we get ready to embark on our adventure of Arizona History Happy Hour. That is brought to you by AARP. And so we'll go into that a little bit later. Well, let's see. Oh, I need to click there. And then click there. Oh, there we go. All right. So, we've been doing these now for, I guess about a month and a half. And so really for me, it was, I get a lot of my energy from just chatting with people and sharing stories and having them share stories with me. And so I was really missing that kind of contact. And so I really started this up in this time of quarantine and all that's going on as a way so that we can still keep sharing and learning and growing. So this has been a lot of fun, and I'm happy to be doing this. It is and I do want to say thank you to AARP for being a sponsor of the Arizona History Happy Hour. It's great to have them, and also if you would like to support it as well, you are more than welcome to join into the mix. So if you'd like to find out more information about AARP Arizona, you can go to the website right there, which is www.aarp.org/AZ. They have all kinds of resources to help us right now as we're in this kind of quarantine, as we're all sitting at home trying to maintain a sense of happiness and safeness. So if you would like to be a part of those that help this continue, you can Venmo me. There's all kinds of ways you can be a part of it. So, all right. So my name is Marshall Shore, and I am your host this evening. I'm also known as the Hip Historian. Now, every week I do go into, because I know we have a lot of new viewers. I mean, last week, I think we hit about 1,500 people across the state. So I know there's all kinds of new people. So I always kind of like to go through the introduction just so that way people know who I am and kind of what I do and kind of what my shtick is. So about 20 years ago, I was working in a library in Brooklyn, and it was winter, it was cold, and I was sure ready to get out of Dodge. And so we loaded up everything we own into a big orange cube, a U-Haul. And their international world headquarters are right here in Valley of the Sun. They started here in the 50s with everybody who was migrating going through. They realized they had issues trying to get all their belongings. And so they started the whole U-Haul craze. Now, as soon as we got here, we moved into a 1956 ranch. Originally, it was a patchwork, a myriad of beiges. I'm happy to say now is a lovely sea foam and cantaloupe. Just 2 colors, which makes it a lot easier. And that is indeed what my kitchen looks like today. All that buttercream yellow tile. And if you'll notice, it's also got a matching in-the-wall oven. Now, if you look really closely, you'll notice there's something missing in the door of that oven. And it is indeed a window. Now, for those of you who are viewing on Facebook, if you wouldn't mind just clicking on the share button so that way people know what you're doing, and maybe they'll get hooked into it too and enjoy watching us as well. And then, you know, as soon as I got here to the valley, all I kept hearing about how there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true because every time I went somewhere, I came face to face with so many amazing stories and started really retelling them. And then there's that post-war boom that I think in a lot of ways made the Arizona that we all know and love today. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passed through on their way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving here in huge numbers, looking for a different way of life, and in some cases, a house just like mine. And then there's this man, which I'm sure happy he's around. So this is Dr. Carrier, the inventor of air conditioning. And you know, I'm sure happy that I have him around today because it would have been a really hot one if that wasn't the case. Now, also, the Phoenix New Times has named me best historian several years running, as well as the Phoenix Magazine named me the best bespectacled Phoenix celebrity because I do indeed like my eyewear. Now, you know, not necessarily a good venue for this, but I'm kind of known for what I wear because I always have my own idea of what I think looks good. And for me, pretty much everything has a story. And so you might remember during in February, we have a big celebration on February 14th, which is Arizona's Statehood Day. And back in 2012, for 100 years of statehood, we had a centennial celebration across the state. And on that February 14th, right here in front of the state capitol, someone gave me 15 minutes on the main stage to talk about anything I wanted to. And I chose to talk about an event that was started back in 1926 by Charlotte Hall, our first poet laureate. Now, you know, if you ever make your way to Prescott, you can indeed go visit her house, which is where territorial governors lived. But she also, it is now a museum that you can go visit as well. Now, the event was called Mask of the Yellow Moon. And it was quite the shindig. Now, the first year it happened to the El Riba Shriners Temple, which is literally just down the street from the Capitol. But, you know, they got kicked out for something that didn't happen. And so they were brought right back. So they were kicked out, but happy to say they are coming back in a few years once the building gets brought back up to code. Now, from there, it moved to Montgomery Stadium, which was our very first stadium in Arizona. And there were lots of things that happened there, including the very first bowl game for Arizona. And I sure wish somebody would bring that back because I could use a big bowl of that bowl. It was called the Salad Bowl, really kind of playing up on that Arizona agricultural history. And you would expect nothing less than the queen of the salad bowl riding in her very own salad bowl. And if you look close, you'll notice that there is indeed a spoon and fork that she can serve from. That would be a lot of salad. Now, the Mask of the Yellow Moon ran from 1926 to 1955. At its height, it had about 5,000 high school and college students performing. And it was touted right up there with Mardi Gras as something that everyone in the country should go and see. And a lot of people did. I mean, you can see here, it was like your ticket was only $1. And because it was basically Phoenix Union High School, it was woven through the curriculum. So everybody got involved. While you had the debate club doing skits, you had multiple marching bands, as well as some really amazing sets. Now, I've got a story from a guy that him and his buddies would go steal a bit of that set when the show was done, and they would put on plays throughout the rest of the year in front of that bit of cabbage set. Then there were all these costumes that were designed by students and made by home ec. And so for each show, they would have had a whole slew of costumes. To actually get ready for Centennial, I actually got a group of about a dozen women together to talk about what it was like being in the Mask of the Yellow Moon. And so many of them talked about how it was a rite of passage. It was one of those things where it really got them outside of themselves, looking at their community in a completely different light. And they actually got complaints the following year because those students didn't have a Mask of the Yellow Moon. And I was lucky enough to find a few dresses in a box. And so I was able to rally some friends and talk them into putting those dresses on. And actually, Jenny is there in that amazing Aztec dress, and we're going to see her in just a little bit. And so what you're looking at here are dresses from the late 30s that were beautiful and in amazing condition for their age. Now, you might have already guessed that I'm not a very good wallflower. And so I needed something that would stand up to those beautiful dresses and those beautiful ladies. And so I talked to my friend Glenn. Now, Glenn rolled in town in the early 50s as a sign designer. And you can see here he is getting an award from the Arizona Sign Association as now part of their Wall of Fame. So they've inducted him as well as 10 other folks for the first time, talking about that signage history across Arizona. One of the signs he worked with, you might notice, is right on the corner of 7th Avenue and McDowell, where is the My Florist sign. So the jacket that he created was really an homage to the Arizona state flag, and I think he did a heck of a good job. Now, one reason why I like this story is because I can pull several different things out of it. And one of my favorite things was I was doing a presentation for the Arizona First Families. And afterwards, a woman tapped me on the shoulder. We went out to her car and she pulled this dress out of her car. And this was her mother's dress that she wore in Mask of Yellow Moon. But what was even better was she had the programs. So she knew exactly when her mother would have worn this. She had programs for 28 and 29, which was really early in the formation of the Mask of the Yellow Moon. And at that point, the librarian in me kicked in and I couldn't touch those frail pieces of paper. I didn't have my white gloves, so I didn't want to harm them. So I look forward to getting another chance to go through them and actually looking and seeing exactly what year and what number those dresses were worn for. And because it is indeed Arizona History Happy Hour, we indeed do have a happy hour cocktail. So let me make sure things are working. I heard my phone over here dinging, which is usually not a good sign. All right, so now we're ready for that. All right, so what I've started doing is actually talking to the guests to find out, well, you know, what their drink of choice is. And so we came up with the pink Starburst. Now, I thought it was called Starburst, first off, just because of the color, but you know, it's always amazing what you'll find out. So let's see. So we need 2 parts of our prickly pear flavored vodka. All right, so we've got that. We need 1 part fresh lime juice. All right, and then a little bit of simple syrup. And then to add a little bit of interest, just a few dashes of bitters, which also make it a lovely color. Then we will throw in some ice, as I try not to throw it all over the place. All right. And there we go. We have our cocktail. So cheers. Now while we've got this, I want to talk a little bit about pulling things from my collection. So let's see. So let's actually... So this is actually a drawing by Maggie Keene, who is a local artist. She has most recently been, you may have seen her on TV for the David Bowie murals that she's done around town over in Garfield. Well, this was back in 2016. We were on the rooftop of the Claren Hotel for the 40th anniversary of probably one of the most horrific things that happened in Phoenix that has had such a change on Arizona. And it was the 40th anniversary of Don Bowles. Don Bowles, back in '76, was a reporter for the Arizona Republic. And he was researching a variety of things, such as horse racing, mafia, and land scams. And he went to the Claren Hotel for a meeting that didn't happen. Now, as he was backing up, so the meeting didn't happen, he went back out to his car. He got in it. As he was backing his car up, it blew up. Now, he survived for another 11 days. But that action of that car bombing brought journalists from across the country down to the Adams Hotel, and they continued his work. Now, out of that came a couple of books, a slew of articles, and it's still one of those things that people did indeed go to jail, go to prison. And indeed, Jamie, the car used to be in your studio. So the Datsun that he was driving actually was after that, it was stored at the Ice House, which at that point was police evidence storage, and that is 5th Avenue and Jackson. And from there, it made its way to DC as part of the museum. Now, the museum is going to be closing, so there's talk now about what happens to that car. So there's hope that it may come back to Arizona, but since it's a private museum, who knows what's going to happen. Now, people did go to prison, but there was always kind of a thought that it wasn't really the folks that were the cause of it. Now, there's various theories about why his car was blown up and even who. And it's one of those most ongoing tales. And so what was really interesting on the 40th anniversary, we had a slew of presenters. We packed the rooftop of the Clarendon talking about that history and kind of, it really was that bomb heard across the Southwest. So many folks either knew Don Bowles or even heard the bomb go off. Now, as far as we know, he is the only American journalist murdered in the line of duty. And so I know there's always a small group that gets together at the Clarendon on the anniversary. And I just wanted to highlight that since it is June 4th, just a couple days away from the anniversary, so that in case that some of you didn't necessarily know that story, that we just kind of keep that history alive. So thank you all for being here. I see we keep having more and more people show up, which is always great. And again, I'd like to thank AARP for being a sponsor of this. And through the miracle of modern technology, or video phones, as they like to call them in the 60s, I would like to bring on my friend, Ginny Culler, also known as Redhead Sadie. Hey, Ginny.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? Mighty fine, and a great big Western howdy to you, Marshall Shore.
Well, thank you so much. We're having a great time here so far, just talking about some history.
I can see that.
Indeed. So, Jenny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my business name is Redhead Sadie Vintage. I have been buying and selling and wheeling and dealing for 26 years. Um, I primarily deal in vintage clothing, jewelry, and accessories for men and women. But I will sell pretty much anything if it's old enough and worth a few bucks. So I have lots and lots and lots of experience in this field. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk a little bit about stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And Jenny's probably my main source of some good vintage duds.
Well, you're pretty good too.
Well, we all need a dealer, so
I'm a great enabler. Talk to me, definitely. Yes.
indeed. All right. So, so one of the things I always like to do is we always have some trivia. Now, what we do is we have 10 questions. We'll go through those questions. They're all multiple choice. So even if you don't know the answer, just take a stab at it. And, options are, you've got a possibility of 25%, even if you don't even know it, getting it just right. And then what happens at the end of that, we'll actually have a little bit of history, and then we'll go into explaining the answers for the trivia questions. Because, a lot of times trivia is really kind of done just to show off what you know. But I like to use it as a way to actually teach people. So that way, you get to have fun and you now know some of those stories. So Brenda, Jenny is located right here in the Valley of the Sun.
I am. I'm right. I'm sorry. I'm right here in Phoenix. Yes, I do a bit of traveling when the situation is safe to do so.
Right, when it's safe to travel.
Yes, but I do a lot of high-profile vintage shows that are just a blast, and I miss very, very much. I do Arizona Tiki Oasis. I do Junk in the Trunk Vintage Market, both here in Arizona. And I'm hoping that they will come back around so that I can see all my friends and customers and people I miss.
Indeed. All right, so what you can do with the trivia is you can either grab a pencil and paper and keep track of your choices, or you can throw them here in the chat. Now, depending on what service you're using, there can be a bit of a lag, so sometimes people may not know what question you're answering, but whatever you think is the best for you, you do just that. All right. So our first question is, what bootmaker created boots for Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Frank Sinatra? Oh my gosh, what a wide span of folks that is.
Wow.
So was it A, Cowtown? Was it B, Aldo? Was it C, Highland? Or was it D, Paul Bond? Which one of those bootmakers made boots for a bunch of Hollywood celebrities? All right, question 2. What is the best way to remove... Oh, and that actually is quite relevant on a day like today.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Can I? Oh, you go ahead. Sorry.
You go right ahead.
No, I was going to say, I get this question a lot from people all over the place. What's the best way to remove perspiration stains out of vintage cotton dresses and blouses and shirts? We'll talk about this a little bit more, but this is definitely a high volume question. So go ahead.
All right. So the best way to remove perspiration stains out of vintage cotton is A, oil and vinegar, B, bleach, C, vinegar and water, or D, just plain old water. So which one of those will get perspiration stains out of your good clothing? All right. Who is credited with the Fiesta dress, with creating the Fiesta dress? Now, if you don't know what a Fiesta dress is, we'll go into that as we go through the answers. So A, Chichi LaRue, B, Dolores Gonzalez, C, Patricia Fields, or D, Waylon Flowers? so, so I knew somebody would enjoy some of those answers. So one of those folks is credited with creating the fiesta dress. All right. Question 4. What town was the home and studio for artist Harwood Steiger? Was it A, Tubac, B, Jerome, C, Bisbee, or D, Clifton? Which one of those small towns in Arizona was home and studio for Harwood Steiger? All right. 5. So we're at the halfway point. So we're almost halfway done. What was the trademark applique for a clothing brand, Alfredo's Wife? Was it A, a platypus? Was it B, a mushroom? C, a mouse? Or D, a cactus? All right. So Jamie was laughing about one of the earlier answers, one of the options. All right, so on to 6. What sportswear item was made popular by Globe native Helen Jacobs? A, tennis shorts, B, culottes, C, a sports bra, or D, socks? What sportswear item was made popular by Globe native? All right. 7. What local fashion incubator is making PPE gowns working with hospitals? Is it A, Fabric, B, Levi's, C, Garanimals, or D, Warizona? Which one of those local fashion incubators? All right. Okay. What Phoenix company was famous for tight swimsuits and campy catalogs? Was it A, Speedo, B, Par of Arizona, C, platypus wear? Wow, I must have really liked platypuses at the moment.
Apparently you did, yeah.
Or D, Sun. So which one of those Phoenix-based companies were famous for tight swimsuits and campy catalogs? And we're coming to the home stretch. Only 2 more questions. What is the best way to dry vintage clothing? Would it be A, a clothes dryer, B, a hair dryer, C, a box fan, or D, hanging them up? What is the best way to dry vintage clothing? And we're down to our last and final question. What iconic department store sold exclusive fabric by the yard? Was it A, Marshall's, B, Goldwater's, C, Macy's, or D, Steinmart? Which one of those iconic department stores based right here in Arizona was famous for selling fabric by the yard? All right. So while you're kind of making your last adjustments to your thing, we're actually going to talk a little bit about Arizona music. So back in the 50s, someone decided as a PR stunt that they would take and put a car on a flagpole and challenge someone to sit in that car. And if they could sit in it for the length of time, they could win that car. And so while Lonesome John was up there, he did indeed sit in there for 211 days. He actually won the car. But you might wonder, what did he do while he was up there? Well, one of the things he did, he recorded music. So he actually did 2 songs that were recorded in that car. He actually did have a cat with him that in that span of time also gave birth to kittens.
I did not know that. Wow.
And then he had a kiddie pool that he would take a bath in. So he basically pretty much lived up there. And you can see here he is. And he actually, to do his laundry, he would hang things on the antenna to dry. And you can see there he is holding his guitar.
Now, where's the showmanship nowadays for this kind of thing? I mean, this is so cool. You know, Marshall, you need to get an old car and put it on a flagpole and do this stunt all over again.
Well, you know, there's talk about how they can't really do stuff like this now because of all the insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Issues and everything else. Up in Yucca, they have a big semi sitting on top of a pole as well. That's just there as... But it's like the guy has said, you know, I could never do that again because of all the issues.
Yeah. No, I know, but it's fun to think you could do it, you know.
But, you know, what I thought was really interesting was so after Lonesome John not only recorded these songs, won the car, they actually wound up sending him a huge bill for all the food and stuff that he used while he was there. It was such a high price that he paid. He had to actually sell the car to to pay the bills.
Well, you know, if anybody ever finds that 45, I'm looking for one for my boyfriend, for Johnny.
Aren't we all looking for that one?
I know. It's worth quite a bit of money, actually. It's extraordinarily rare also.
Right. And there are you can listen to it on YouTube. If you type in Lonesome John, it will come up. Side A and side B. So
crazy.
So, Susan, are you having problems hearing us? Susan's like, oh, no sound. I'm like, uh-oh, well, that's not good.
Gosh.
So, all right. So answers dead ahead. All right. So what bootmaker created those boots for those Hollywood and country stars? Why, it was Paul Bond out of Nogales. Now, he started off as a cowboy in Texas, doing the rodeo scene, and he started sticking his pants inside of his boots so that way they wouldn't get caught on things. And then it's like, you know, he made himself a pair of boots because he's like, well, now that I'm showing them off, I want to be a little flashy. And so he was known for creating quite flashy boots. And so that's why Hollywood got a hold of him. And so really since the mid-40s, and they're currently still in operation. Actually, his daughter now runs the shop down in Nogales. You can go down there and get boots made for you. I mean, their saying is that if you can draw it, they can make it. And they do a pretty amazing job.
And what famous hip historian has boots from Paul?
I know. You know, I was going to put them on, but I'm like, nobody could see them if I was wearing them. So
right. Yeah, no, your famous Arizona boots were made for you to your specifications by Paul Bond. Yes.
Exactly. To go with this jacket.
Absolutely.
So, all right. And so the best way to remove perspiration stains out of vintage cotton is water and vinegar.
That's right. Vinegar and water is going to be your best bet when it comes to removing old sweat stains out of a 60-year-old cotton dress or shirt. There are lots of different ways you could do it. You can look up on YouTube or even just generally online to see the different proportions. I usually use 2 parts vinegar, 1 part water. Give it a good soak. Usually I don't have any fabric dye, run off or anything, but it does tend to get the perspiration stains out quite well. It also helps that once you have it soaking about 10 minutes or so, just check it. Cold water, always go with cold water first when you're trying to do something like this. After we hand wash it, if it's really delicate, or if you wash it on gentle in the washer, if you hang it up outside in the sun is going to do half the work for you. I've done this.
Okay.
The trick is to hang it up in the sunshine. Yes.
So why not bleach? Because I thought bleach was good at getting stains out of stuff.
No.
I know, but that's why I'm asking.
No, bleach is very harsh on vintage fabrics. It can actually eat fabric away, which I figured out a long, long time ago. Bleach is great for newer things, newer fabrics. I would suggest you not use it on vintage fabric. Just like I don't recommend dry cleaning for most things either, because those chemicals, I've seen things just get shredded from the chemicals and the harshness, especially in Arizona because of the water here.
That makes sense because our water is so hard here.
Yes, it is. Yes. So, I mean, this is everything that I say is based on my personal experience and some sad failures. So if you don't want your heart broken when that pretty little dress gets ruined, just err on the side of caution. Start with cold water every single time with everything.
All right.
All right.
On to question 3. So who is credited with creating the fiesta dress? Now, I guess, so tell us a little bit about what a fiesta dress even is.
All right. Well, the fiesta dress or patio dress has also in the past been called a squaw dress, which has become an unpolitically correct term for this kind of dress. So all of us in the vintage field only use fiesta dress or patio dress, so we don't offend anybody, which makes complete total sense. You know, times change.
Right.
More social mores change. So we're now calling this a patio dress or fiesta dress. Anyway, Dolores Gonzalez, and her brand was known as Dolores of Tucson. She started in the early 50s, and it took off very quickly because these beautiful dresses were loved by women buying them on vacation, and they wanted a little bit of the Southwest to take back to Illinois or Indiana or wherever with them. She started selling to the big department stores all over the country, and they became a fad. It lasted until about the early 1960s. And as far as I'm concerned, Dolores Gonzalez did the best ones. Her quality was incredible. I'm lucky to have one set. I have one Dolores of Tucson Fiesta set, and I treasure it. And it's coral and black, and I love it. There were a zillion different makers, small labels throughout Arizona and the West back in the day, and I'm always finding new labels.
Yeah,
So,
one of the things I loved about what I love about these is it really gave kind of women a chance to open their own dress shop, and so there were so many corners that had a dress shop that just made patio sets for
yes.
all those tourists.
And actually, they were fairly expensive back in the day because it took a long time to sew those hundreds and hundreds of yards of rickrack and trim on the yards and yards of fabric. And then they were pleated. And that in and of itself takes a lot of time if you don't have the actual pleater apparatus. I have a pleater. And
I thought you had one.
I do. I have a pleater. I have yet to master the art of pleating these dresses, but when I do, I'll let everybody know.
In your spare time.
In my spare time, I'll figure that out. Yeah.
So Jamie's asking if you can find any in vintage shops. Yeah, you can still find these in vintage shops.
If you just
Antique Sugar, I know you have some. So
I do. Yes, I usually have some. I'm not as picky about these as I am about other things. I will sell something with a little small spot, or I will sell something that isn't perfect because they are very hard to find, especially in larger sizes. Smaller sizes are not a problem. What I love about them, though, is that you just never know what you're going to find. I have found some amazing colors and with some amazing trims. Turquoise and black and brown are the common colors that I've found. But the one that you're showing there, the lime green one, that I would probably knock my mother over for that one. Love you, Mom.
Exactly. I'm sure you would. But
yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when I found that photo, I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful photo.
Oh, and when you see them in person, they're so beautiful.
Right, so what you don't realize, what doesn't really show up in this is that trim, so much of it's metallic. So it really is like hyper reflective.
Yes. And the thing about the metallic trim you need to be careful of, never, never, never use OxyClean on metallic anything when it's attached to fabric, because it will eat the fabric away. I've had this happen so many times until I learned not to do it. But OxyClean is really bad for metallic, like metallic designs on fabric.
Oh.
It's very harsh on the Lurex, which is the metallic fiber that was in a lot of that, the rickrack, the metallic rickrack in the trims.
Okay.
So that's another little tip. Don't use OxyClean. If you have to wash one of these, just do it by hand very carefully.
Now, how do you keep those pleats? I mean, that would be my fear is,
Well,
because you lay it to dry, they're going to flatten out. And
yes, there are a couple different ways you can do it. You can actually sit there and fold the pleats and set them while the skirt is wet with like clothespins.
okay.
It takes a long time. That's why they invented the pleater. Or if you can find a dry cleaner that'll do it for you, it's going to be expensive. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, what you do is you get a broomstick and you take the fabric, the skirt when it's wet, and you bunch it up as best you can, and you wind it around the broomstick, okay? And then you put it in like an old stocking, like an old pantyhose, pantyhose, excuse me, a pantyhose leg, and you let it dry, preferably outside in the heat. Oh my goodness, excuse me. So it's not going to be a perfect uniform pleat, but it's going to give you that look. So if you're in a pinch and you need to have it like, ready to go in a couple of days, that's one thing that you can do. And there's videos online on YouTube that show you how to do it. It's a broomstick skirt. It's very simple.
Ah, okay.
But, those sharp knife pleats that the pleater does and that dry cleaners can do, there's nothing like that. It's just, I have actually worn skirts or worn sets that I would wash the top, but when I wore the skirt, once I was done wearing it, I would hang it up inside out to preserve the pleat and just to let it air so I didn't have to wash it.
So Ryan is asking, is a patio skirt considered the same thing?
I'm sorry?
So Ryan is asking, is a patio skirt considered the same thing?
Yeah, a patio skirt or a broomstick skirt. They kind of evolved at the same time. The broomstick skirt, that is an old Native American fashion, and I believe Dolores copied a lot of those styles in order to invent this look, this particular fiesta style.
Right. And it really came from, I think, a Navajo kind of a dress, and so she just suddenly started making it form-fitting, and so kind of tailored it. And so she was really the first one to do that.
She kind of expounded upon the general idea and made it accessible to to everybody.
Right. And you can find some that are super tiny.
Oh yes, 22-inch waist. It wouldn't fit on my leg. I'd need two of them, one for each leg.
Right. Exactly. All right. So what town was the home and studio for artist Harwood Steiger? Why, it was Tubac.
Yes, it was.
The artist community, and in the 50s, he was really kind of instrumental in being right there and helping the art scene really kind of expand in Tubac.
Yes.
So, do you want to talk about his textiles?
Well, actually, our friend Cynthia de Villemoret is the expert. She is the world-renowned expert on Harwood Steiger textiles, and her collection is unimaginable. It's so beautiful. But yes, his silkscreen designs are just now getting really popular. If you go on eBay or Etsy, sometimes you find them for very high prices because the quality it's astounding what he produced.
Right. I mean, and it was so Southwest. What I always thought was interesting was that I think in some ways he got more recognition outside of the Southwest than he actually did in the Southwest.
Yes, and the fabrics that he used a kettle cloth, which is like a nubby cotton, and he also used like a cotton sheeting, which is really light and perfect for like, you know, a muumuu, or not a muumuu, I'm sorry, caftan. His everything that he did was just magical. His designs are incredible. So if you're lucky enough to find any Harwood Steiger, grab it.
I know. I think we all have a little bit of Harwood Steiger, probably not enough to do anything with, but
I do. I do. Yeah.
okay. All right. So question 5, at that halfway point, what was the trademark applique for clothing brand Alfredo's wife? And it was a mouse.
Yep. That's how you knew it was actually Alfredo. And her husband was actually named Alfredo. Her brand, I believe she was from Jerome, and the brand has still continued up in Cottonwood. Her designs, you know, she did amazing kooky stuff back in the 70s. You know, it was all meant to be resort wear.
I mean, like, look at this. I mean, this is not like, hey, I'm going to go out and play tennis. It's more, okay, it's a statement piece.
We're going to go lounge around the pool and have some cactus coolers and, yeah, then talk about what we're going to have for dinner tonight at the resort. Yeah, no, I love Alfredo's wife, especially her early stuff. Because
I like the early stuff as well.
Yeah, because she did such cool designs, and she would incorporate pockets into her garments too, and it would look like a mushroom, or it would look like a flower, you know, or sometimes it was the mouse itself. I've had some crazy wild maxi skirts of hers that I did not hold on to them very long because they sold really fast. So if you can find her stuff, it's good to have it if you like it. I love it. It's not my style, but I'm happy to let other people enjoy it.
So Marty, so Harwood Steiger was really started doing stuff in the 50s.
Yeah.
Both him and his wife passed away, I think late 70s, early 80s. So I mean, he was really producing really in that late 50s, 60s, and 70s was really kind of his heyday.
Cynthia would know the exact dates of that, but yeah.
Right, exactly. So yeah, but he was quite prolific. I mean, she has samples of where he would like silk screen, there would be a mistake, and so then he would just silk screen another image on top of that, so you just wind up with these really crazy layer upon layer of images.
Yes.
So
he was a wonderful artist. Yes.
All right. What sportswear item was made popular by Globe native Helen Jacobs? Tennis shorts. So in the 30s, she was basically a huge tennis star, and she was so Helen Jacobs and Helen Moody. It was the battle of the two Helens. They were always at odds with each other, kind of like the Williams sisters. And when they first walked out to play tennis in these really high hems, as opposed to the almost floor-length skirts that had been used before, I mean, you can see, I mean, here Helen is on the cover of Time magazine. And really, the shorts haven't changed that much since the mid-30s. So, and I love that she was born in Globe, but then her family moved to San Francisco. And so but still, I love the fact that she started her life in Globe and then changed fashion history.
Yes, she did.
Indeed. All right. What local fashion incubator is making PPE gowns? Now, those are the gowns that are used by healthcare workers that are impermeable by corona and other viruses and other pathogens. And so Fabric, which is a local incubator that has really started 3 years ago to really kind of help local designers and create an education as well as local manufacturing. And so with the disruption that's now happened across the planet, basically Fabric has stepped up, and so they now have 4 teams that are making hundreds of gowns a day for hospitals locally and across the country as well. So they've really kind of stepped up their game and are really kind of showing they actually worked with a doctor to design the city gown that they're using. So it's really great to see designers and health professionals all kind of converging and creating something new that's never existed before until now.
No, Angela's an amazing person doing this.
Sherry are great, the co-founders of Fabric.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, Angela and Sherry are the co-founders. And so, and I just love how they just keep moving and pushing forward and as really change agents and just kind of using fashion as a way to now even be a game changer, even in the medical field as well. So,
yep.
Indeed. All right. So what Phoenix company was famous for tight swimsuits and campy catalogs? Why, it would be part of Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
So if anyone has ever gone up 16th Street and you see that building that used to be, I think, a floor store with like almost like a bacon-shaped awning, that was the headquarters of Par of Arizona. So Ralph Parachek, when he was in college as an architect, was looking for a way to make money. And so it was also at a time when bathing suits were really kind of too big. So he decided he would go get a checker tablecloth and made a pair of swim trunks, as well as a few others, and then sold those and wound up actually with an empire that was Phoenix, LA, Hollywood, had physical stores, as well as catalogs. And so you can see, I mean, he was really from the mid 50s to actually the company just shut down a few years ago. But he did a lot of his own patterns. So they all have a very unique look to them that you necessarily can't get elsewhere. You can still find some of his clothing some places. One of the things I love about the catalog that we have on the screen there, if you start looking at the models, you realize that each model is a duplicate.
They're clones.
Exactly. I mean, especially the red and white and the blue and white striped. I mean, it's just like they took the same head, just put it on.
Yeah, I can't get over his hair and his sideburns, man. I mean, it's like it's shellacked on there.
Well, and I mean, and the beauty of these are when you actually see the physical piece, it really was cut and paste. He was cutting them out, and so you can see the little scissor marks around the edges, and then you would just paste it into the catalog. So yeah. All right. What is the best way to dry vintage clothing? And I will let you answer that. Hanging things up. Why not the dryer?
Because your biggest enemies of vintage clothing would be heat and agitation. It depends. I mean, some things like vintage linens, vintage textiles, like tablecloths, sometimes they'll be fine, but it is really better to let things just hang in the natural air and dry. Heat is really hard on fibers. It really is. I mean, new fibers are different, but old fibers definitely. Plus, hanging things up in the sun really helps get them white. I've gotten insurmountable stains out by hanging things up, in the sun. It's like one of your best friends. And especially out here in Arizona, it's free, You
got a bit of sun. I mean, today would have been a great day to hang some clothes out because they would have dried like that really super quick.
Yeah, I haven't owned a dryer for probably 12, 15 years. So yeah, the best way to dry your vintage is to hang up. I always tell people, start off really easy with vintage garments that you can wash. And you can always work up to a different cleaning method. But if you start with something gentle and you still haven't gotten that stain out, or it still smells funny or whatever, you can always wash it again. It takes time. The thing is that you just have to be able to forgive some things when you do vintage,
Right.
So
it can't be perfect sometimes.
Sometimes it's just what it is.
Indeed. All right. And so our last question. What iconic department store sold exclusive fabric by the yard? And that would be Goldwater's.
Yes, Goldwater's. They were a department store. Obviously, it was Barry Goldwater's family who started this. You would know more. You would be able to talk more about that part. But Goldwater's, as far as I'm able to understand, with all the things that I found over the years, Goldwater's had a lot of really wonderful exclusive fabric with which you could make your own clothing out of. They had a pattern department. There is a fabric that I find frequently, and actually Robert Black has found. It's a cotton poly blend, and it's a very large border of yay. You know, the kachinas.
Right.
You
They're
know,
quite elongated.
yes, they're very elongated, and there's a cactus that's implemented into the design that reminds me so much of the Goldwater's cactus. You know, the Goldwater's iconic logo. We haven't been able to figure out, none of us dealers have ever been able to figure out where it is.
We keep trying.
We don't know, but you know, it's very iconic. I've been finding it off and on, both in yardage and in garments that have already been made for years. But they also had a lovely print of kachinas that was meant to be made from panels to make a circle skirt. I actually have a Thunderbird, or not a Thunderbird, I'm sorry, a Kachina skirt. That's going to the grave with me. I will never sell it because it's lovely. It's marked Goldwater's on the inside of the selvage on the end of the fabric, so I know where it came from. And I have a friend who actually found the actual yardage not cut also, and hers says Goldwater.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Aubrey found that. Aubrey and Eric found that.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm dying to see her make that and wear it. I just want to see. I want to see it so bad. So.
Right. Well, and then you also have, I mean, it was like Lloyd Kiva New had fabric at Goldwater's. So, I mean, some really high-end fabric.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, and it really would have been also at the height of home sewing, when so many folks were doing things at home instead of going to the store and buying them.
Yes. If I could walk back into a Goldwater's about 1958, I would probably lose my mind.
You're not alone in that for many reasons.
Yes.
So. All right. So, Jenny, I know we've had a couple of people ask, how can they get in touch with you? Do you have an email address?
I do. Actually, if you want to hit me up through Facebook or Instagram, I'm Redhead Sadie Vintage. It's all strung together. You can always message me. My email is jkuller2, the number 2, @gmail.com. I'm very easy to reach. I'm very accessible. If you ever want to come to the house and plow through the piles, you're welcome to.
Which is a lot of fun.
It is. I've had my friend Bethany, my dear friend Bethany, told me it's like vintage Disneyland, vintage clothing Disneyland. I don't know how I feel about that, but that's okay. No, I'm just kidding.
Because it is an easy ride.
Yeah, you can't ride anything, but you can try the stuff on.
Right,
so
of course.
There is that. But yeah, no, I miss people. I really miss my interactions with people since this whole COVID thing started. So I'm lonely. Come visit me. We can wear masks. It's okay.
Well, and then I like Nikki's like, I got my usual 40% right. But, but the goal is not necessarily what you get right, but it's really more about that learning.
Oh, yeah.
And that's more the fun of, and that's why, I'm not necessarily I've got one friend who's listening from Ohio who's big into trivia, was actually on Jeopardy. But I never really liked that trivia was like this one-sided, where it's like, okay, it's more about what you know, not about how do you learn what you don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why, start doing this as a way just to kind of make it fun and educational. And people get to learn some fun stuff.
Like you and I always say, we forget that other people do not live in our heads with us and don't, know the same things that we do. So, and I love learning from other people. This business, I learn something new every day. There's so much out there that is untold that needs to be told, like what you're doing,
Right. And like with that one fabric that we keep trying, and someday we'll figure out the story of it.
We will. We'll do it. We'll figure it out.
I mean, there's none of us looking, trying to figure it out, that suddenly somebody will break down and be like, oh yeah, that was my design. So,
right? Yeah, I know. I'm dying. I would love to see Robert Black's face when we tell him who it is. Like, I mean, that would be amazing.
So, all right. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for being on and hanging out and sharing some great fashion stories with us. I mean, how to take care of clothing as well as some of the history.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
I agree. And, you know, do a shout out of your email again, just so that way it's there as well. And, you know, I see Johnny's on here. So maybe, Johnny, if you can type in her email address, it would be much appreciated. Oh my gosh, my friend Anita got 7 out of 10.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Wow, you go, Anita.
Anita.
Yeah. So, all right, Jenny, thank you so much and have a great rest of your evening. I think we've got a little bit more to do and then we'll call it a night. So,
all right. Thanks,
cheers.
everybody. Cheers.
All right. So one of the things we always do, all right. So we have Little Arizona. So as we get a chance to talk about some small towns kind of across Arizona, because that in so many ways is really, I think some of the beauty of Arizona is just the fact that we have the 5th largest city in the country, a place that is the fastest growing place right now in the country. And that is true. But the fact that you can be outside of the city in very quick order. And there are so many amazing small towns. And so it really is a chance for people to just kind of go on day trips or even longer and go explore, whether you make your way all to Bisbee, whether you go to Clifton. I think really some of the beauty of Arizona is that landscape getting from point A to point B and the adventures that you have in there as well. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about Jerome. So Jerome is an old mining town that at its height probably had about 10,000 people there. Now you're looking at less than 500 people. And when the mining went away, the population drastically dropped to the point where it was almost a ghost town. Hardly anybody was living there. But, you know, we were obviously not the first ones to mine. In fact, actually, Tuzagut, which is there, is indigenous folks who actually were also mining in the same area as well, long before we ever got there. So it's just all this history. And because it's such kind of funky, quirky town, you wind up with a lot of movies that were made in the area. I mean, not just 310 to Yuma, but also TV shows like The Lone Ranger was filmed there as well. Tombstone, Geronimo, Young Guns. So a lot of Westerns were filmed up in that area. Now, Jerome, it's actually taken from, so Governor Tritle, who was the 6th territorial governor, he was the first governor to actually live in Arizona during his tenure. Most of them never even lived here. But he actually moved to Arizona and started mining. And his mine wasn't doing very well. And so he had to bring in some investors. So he brought in Jerome from New York, who actually became a secretary for the company, as well as an investor. But part of the deal was, as an investor, he wanted the town named after him. So Eugene Jerome is now kind of the namesake of Jerome. Now, because it is a heritage site, all the buildings are important. There's no new building going on in Jerome. In fact, here's an old hotel that as it started falling down, to save it, they actually started removing parts of it so that the facade wouldn't just cave in. And then because there was lots of blasting going on, here is the jail cell that actually slowly just kind of slid down the hill. that now has a fence around it. No one can be incarcerated there, but you can still go, but you can't get too close to it. So that way, in case it does decide to collapse, but it wasn't uncommon for buildings to shift and move and slide down. Now, it is also kind of a big tourist haven. And Deb was just over on some Route 66 towns, which I know we were talking about a few of those over the last few weeks. So you have the Haunted Hamburger, which used to be a sleeping quarters for miners. Now there is, and it is called the Haunted Hamburger because it is supposedly haunted. I've got a friend who actually was helping the family that converted it into the Haunted Hamburger. And as they were working, they kept losing hammers. And then they would find them in the weirdest places. And then one day they ran into the former owner and he was like, "Oh, how are your hammers?" So the energy that's there likes to play with hammers and hide them. She also said there was a story about how there was a naval guy who was staying there, and he was staying on the very top floor. He checked in with his trunk and he left his trunk. And she said, you know, you can still hear the trunk being dragged across the floor, dropped, and then dragged back again, continually all night long. She said she did spend some nights there that were fairly sleepless. And then the Jerome Grand Hotel, which was actually built originally as a hospital. Now it was built on solid ground. So even though there was all the mining and blasting going on, this was a solid piece and was not going to go anywhere. And it did not. It still stands. In fact, it was the most up-to-date hospital. And even after all the mines closed, the hospital was kind of maintained because it was the newest, best equipped hospital in the area. So they kept it around. And then in the 90s, it was bought by a gentleman who decided to turn it into a hotel, which he did. And so you can stay there as well as have dinner. Now, there are also talks about different energies that hang out there. There is talk about this building. You can see a woman in white who is a nurse that walks the floor. But probably their most famous is Claude Harvey. So Claude Harvey was a handyman. And one day he was found in the bottom of the elevator shaft, dead. And at first they thought the elevator had crushed him, but they realized the elevator didn't go that far down. So they really don't know what happened to Claude. But there is talk about how you get in the elevator, and sometimes the lights will flicker, letting you know that Claude is there. All right. So now there are always a plea for, if you have any questions, if you have any stories, if you have any images or comments, please share those. I will put my email up in a little bit. Please reach out to Jenny and ask her questions. So, I mean, it was really great having her on this evening. I also do work with the Arizona LGBT Plus History Project. That is a collaboration between ASU and Phoenix Pride, as we are all trying to collect and preserve our LGBT history for Arizona. A lot of people think it's just really those major cities that have it, but we have quite a bit of history that people aren't aware of. I am also part of the Arizona Vintage Sign Coalition, that's kind of how I knew Goldwater's is mentioned as the first neon sign in Arizona. We don't know what happened to it. It was used as a prank in the 50s. So his brother had it installed in Barry's front yard. And we don't know what happened to it after that. The family may or may not still have it. They don't know. But we are a hotbed right now of just preservation of that vintage signage. So if you'd like to reach out, here you can find me on Facebook. You can also email. Oh, and Nikki, I keep forgetting to send you PayPal information. So you can also reach out to me on Venmo if you would like to help in the cause to keep this show going. And I will see you same bat time, same bat channel, right here in whatever format you're watching it, whether it's on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. I know it goes to a variety of sites as well. So thank you all again. Thank you for support. Thank you to AARP of Arizona. Now, the coronavirus continues to affect us all. We may be apart, but we are not alone. AARP is here in Arizona, providing information that can help you and your family. If you'd like more information from AARP, there is their website right there, the www.aarp.org/az. So again, thank you all so much for joining us, and I will see you back here next week. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you next Thursday.